Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the discussions on Japanese politics, business insights, and Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region. Today we've got Graham Lenz, and we met him through Richard Berger. So Graham is an intercultural communication consultant. He works as a senior consultant at Complus, and we talked with him about possible themes for this room, and Graham came up with a very interesting topic, something which we have never talked about before. It is Kotodama in Japanese. This is the power, or maybe the soul, of words. And I cannot wait to hear what Graham can tell us about this.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Maya. Thank you for having me here. When I was initially invited, as Maya mentioned, we were discussing what should we talk about, and we came up with the topic of Kotodama, which is just something that I do talk about briefly in some of my seminars. I'm an intercultural communication consultant, as Maya mentioned. My job is essentially helping people to communicate more effectively across cultures. So I work 90% of my work is with Japanese business people who are working in a global organization and have to communicate across cultures. And so, of course, words and meaning sometimes doesn't always translate, as I think the people here will know. So I'm supporting that effort to make communication better. I'll tell you a little bit about me. Is that okay, Mike? I can say a little bit about me before the topic?
Absolutely, please go ahead.
Yes, that's important.
Yes.
So originally I'm from Canada. I was born in Vancouver, Canada, grew up there. I was a business student. I actually grew up south of Vancouver. I grew up in a city called Richmond, which was the sister city to Wakayama city in Japan. And so growing up as a member of the swim club in Richmond, I had the opportunity to receive Japanese billets from Wakayama who came to Japan to visit as a sister city adventure. And so I think that was the start of my interest in Japan. In university as a business student, I took one business course on the Flying Tigers. Business was just skyrocketing, and it was the bubble period, so everybody was interested in Japan. And I think that sparked my interest to come to Japan, which was, I stopped counting, but a while, 25 years or so ago I came, always living in the Kansai area. I like to tell people I lived in the real Kansai, actually. So actually, can I ask you, Tim, if I say I'm from the real Kansai, what's your image?
I'd flip a coin. I would think either Osaka or Kyoto, but I don't know.
And then I usually tell people, yeah, even more Kansai than that, which surprises people. But I lived in Nishinomiya.
Oh.
Now, if I say Nishinomiya, for some people that connection to real Kansai may not be so deep. But at that time, there were actually two baseball teams in Nishinomiya. The Hankyu Braves, which is no longer there, the stadium is gone, and the Hanshin Tigers. And I was living very close to Koshien Stadium. So every night, it was kind of the real Kansai for me. And that was my introduction to Kansai and to Japan 25 years ago or more ago. So I've been working since that time, always in communication for a few universities and consulting with business who are globalizing and just need to communicate more effectively in presentations and daily business. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I live in Yokohama now, but before Yokohama, I actually did spend 3 years in Korea as well. My wife was transferred there. She's a Japanese school teacher, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but Japan has a lot of Japanese schools around the world. So if you're a Japanese business person and you're transferred overseas and you want your child to go to a Japanese school, if you're in a big city, there's a chance that there is one. There are two schools in Korea. I was in Seoul for 3 years, but working still in Japan a lot. So I came back to Japan a lot during those 3 years. Actually, I did count the number of entry permits into Korea once, and in a 3 year period, I entered 83 times.
Wow, that's like going to the neighboring city, more or less.
Well, I think that needs to get in the Guinness Book of World Records, maybe. I'll bet it's close.
Well, I did manage to build up a lot of miles during that time, which has been finally useful. I'm in a quarantine now after returning from Vancouver, Canada, after a few years hadn't been there, so I could
Well,
use more
Graham,
miles.
just a quick comment. So obviously one thing we have in common, I worked in the cross-cultural field as well. I focus more on like management, the deeper issues of management and also customer service, things like that. But the other thing we have in common now that I just found out, my wife was also a teacher at Tabakai in Arlington Heights on the outskirts of Chicago. We lived there for 14 years in the 1990s.
Oh,
So we have that connection as well. And what is so interesting is a lot of her students now are grown people, and we've run into them by chance in Hawaii and now back in Japan. My son got a new job, and one of his workmates went to school, and my wife was his teacher. So it's a very small world.
wow, yeah, it sure is, isn't it? Yeah, I'm familiar with some of your work, Tim. I've seen some of your possibly a YouTube video or something online. Very entertaining and appropriate material for people, I think. I actually started my own company, which is called Complus. And since we're talking about the power of words, naming the company was a big challenge. Comms is short for communication, and trying to achieve more, we added the word plus to it. And the idea is that plus is actually an acronym. So it stands for communicate your perspective, learn, and then unite, and possibly we can synergize if we do that. So that's the origin, the deep origin, and my one quick plug for my own company today. But today we want to talk about Kotodama, the power of words. So I'm guessing people that are joining have probably looked this up, but koto is basically meaning word, and dama or tama would be spirit. So the idea of Kotodama is that it's the belief that words have a spirit. Names have a spirit inside of them. So that means that words are pretty powerful. This is not something that's completely unique to Japanese. I know in Korea they have a similar expression that I remember hearing, which was Malishiga Deda, which means mal is words, and it's words. Words become seeds. Shi is seeds. Words become seeds. So words become actual things, and from there they start to grow. So that's kind of a really simple idea of Kotodama. Tim, by any chance, are you a Paul Kelly fan? Australian guitar player?
No, but I'll check him out.
Yeah,
I don't know who he is. So maybe I will be a fan after I listen.
Yeah, I really like a lot of his music, and one of the songs I know that I remember him singing is "From Little Things, Big Things Grow." So I don't think it was connected to just a word, but I think the concept of kind of speaking things and saying things is a beginning. And if we come back to the idea that words have a spirit, then we should be careful about what we say, because words have power. Words have power. So one thing for me about this is recently I made a New Year's resolution. So thinking about that, Maya or Tim, how about you, or anybody else? Has anybody else been making some New Year's resolutions? It's usually the time.
Well, personally, I didn't put anything, in one sentence or two sentences, but still it is inside of me that I want to dedicate more time on Japan Expert Insights. and actually expand the project, make it bigger. And I think that it's really a good thing that that you ask, because I haven't written it down. It's inside of me, and the words are in my head. But probably if I say it enough times, uh, well, it will be helpful. Who knows? Because back home in Bulgaria, I think I wrote about this a couple of days ago. We have a similar belief that there is certain power to words, and if you verbalize your wishes, you actually help them happen and get realized. But also there is, my grandmother always said that you should be very careful how you use the words, because they can make and break things. But it's fascinating how in different cultures we have different expressions about the use of words. So
Yeah. The idea of a New Year's resolution this year, and I think this is something that I see in Japan, is in usually I try to make a detailed resolution, not too much, but maybe three things, and then I make a plan and how I'm going to carry that plan out and how I'm going to achieve those targets. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, I've forgotten the plan. It's too detailed and it never works.
right.
This year, I just came up with one word: kenko, health. That's it.
Could you say that again?
Kenko. So
Kenko.
just health.
Right. Okay.
After sitting for 2 years doing online work, I've realized I haven't gotten enough exercise, and I thought this year I just want to focus on health. And I told my wife that, and she said, "Oh, come on, Graham, you have to be more detailed. That plan is not going to lead to anything." And so I said, "Yeah, I purposely have just chosen one word because it defines what the behavior I should take, and defines my action. So I'm trying to use the power of this one word to focus me." But you see that, I think I see that in Japan. I'm not sure if it's a New Year's program, but I see people choosing words that have special meaning to them. Things like doryoku,
Yeah.
effort. I've seen this on television programs where the focus is on one specific word. So perhaps from that, I had my inspiration to choose just one word this time. And I'm deeply hoping that I can remember that one word.
Yes. Yeah, but how about, when you say the word kenko, how do you feel that power of the word? It's like you say, I hope that it will, help me focus on probably healthier lifestyle, but I just wonder, how do you feel about it? Because when we say, spirit and the spirit of words, obviously there is some interaction between the word itself and ourselves.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. I mean, I think so. I think today's topic of Kotodama, words having a spirit, and the power of words. The power of words, I think, is not really a translation of Kotodama, but more of an explanation or a sub theme. So I'm not sure that the Kenko has a real spiritual connection for me. But I just hope that one word will empower me to move forward. But if I think more deeply about the power, this idea of Kotodama, we can connect. We've all been to, well, I think many people have been to weddings, and they see certain things in weddings, and there's certain vocabulary that you just should not use. There are kind of these imi kotoba, this taboo words that exist for weddings, for example. Like, it would be normal to say, okay, we're going to cut the cake, and there's a little bit of a ceremony for that. But we, in weddings in Japan, we're not using the word cut, because cut or kiru is kind of severing a tie. So I believe the word is keiki nyuto. It's like the knife will be entering into the cake, but there's no word of cut being said. It would be taboo. Or when we talk about speakers, we wouldn't say the last speaker in Japanese. Saigo ni. They say musubi ni. It's kind of connected to another person. Just being careful of where, and I'm sure there are lots more examples of this that people listening today can share with us.
Yes, that's interesting, because as you say, when they don't use the word kiru at weddings and happy occasions, it's usually en o kiranai tame. So that's
right.
And then the next one, musubi ni, it I think
it connects to the same concept. It's probably, connecting people rather than disconnecting them, which goes back to communication. And it's really fascinating because when you think how deep the cultural context of the language here is, let's see, we use the expression of context rich culture, right? And then the language is an expression of that culture. So, and that basically Japanese people, they have that shared heritage and they don't need to verbalize that much of their thoughts in order to understand each other. Still, they think about connecting people and not disconnecting them.
I like it. Yeah, I really like that idea of connectedness, and that, I mean, maybe it's connected to, in Japan at least, to Shintoism, but that we're all kind of connected.
Yeah.
People know about this more than I do. But the idea of being connected, relationships being very key, is something that I try and live in my life as well. It's important.
Yes, and it translates in communication. So I believe that both of you, Graham and Tim, you have seen that how cross-cultural communications become really difficult for, people who belong to different cultures and who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Whether they're, what's that, introvert or extrovert, if I can say so, or more explanatory and less explanatory. So like, let's say the Western, let's say the American or Canadian culture. Back home in Bulgaria, we have the same. We love to explain ourselves, so that we get some understanding from the people around us. But here in Japan, it's the opposite. So you are expected to learn by observation, through observing what is happening around you. So it's fascinating to think about all the hurdles, all the barriers, people coming together, people from different cultures encounter when they try to do business together.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. The idea of these opposites often comes up in intercultural communication. I think communication is often, it's kind of two sides of the same coin. We can approach it one way, or we can approach it another way, which kind of feels like the opposite style of communication. In intercultural communication research, these kind of dichotomies are often discussed, and it's usually, the reality is not so black and white. There is more of an in-between as well. But to kind of create a clear image, opposites are often used in how we approach things. Like one word for your New Year's resolution versus a detailed plan.
Indeed. And
And by the way, I'm so sorry. I'm having internet problems here. I had to switch to regular phone service to get back on. So I have no idea at what part I was cut off. So anyway, my apologies. Yeah, I agree with you, Graham. Often things are framed in black and white and as opposites. And sometimes it's useful, as you implied, to present two different extremes just to make a point. But as you said, it's so nuanced. And even like, my thinking about value differences has really evolved over time. And I had a professor in college who really, I thought, explained it well. He said, think of values as being on a matrix, right? Where two cultures cross. And we share so many of the same human values, but when two different values collide, we don't often prioritize the same way which value takes precedence in a given situation. And I think that's a pretty good nuanced way of looking at value differences. It's more about priorities rather than, oh, we don't value that. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. Usually, going to a deeper level, you find more common values surface, but on the surface, they often don't exist, or they're often seen as rather contradictory. That's true. That's true.
it makes me wonder once again, what is the spirit of words, or in the different cultures, right? In Japan, because of that shared heritage here and background and everything.
That's my
The
announcement for
announcement.
Corona.
The
Yeah, for
announcement,
the,
yes.
yeah.
So now we know that you're in quarantine and you're observing all the rules and so on, right? But back to my question is, well, the Japanese culture is much more, let's say, the Japanese people here, they use fewer words to describe, the reality around them and the situations as compared to Western cultures. And so it makes me wonder whether, let's say the power of words here is much bigger than the power of words in the Western world. And I know it's really subjective and everybody will feel different. And as Tim said, it's a matrix. So we cannot say that it's very different and the things are on the opposite sides of the spectrum, but still.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say again. It recalls you had a different professor who described the Japanese way of thinking as radical empiricism. Everything is very concrete in their world, and that was part of the explanation why they were so good at monozukuri. They're very good with the concrete stuff that you can touch and feel and taste and look at, and that there was a little bit less. The abstraction is less implied. And when you speak on an abstract level, I've heard Japanese complain, it's almost like it's a bad thing, So that's just kind of an interesting point about the way they communicate. There's so much, the onomatopoeia and all these very descriptive words about feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Maya, you were kind of thinking a little bit about other cultures there as well in your, as I was listening to my announcement in the hotel here. One thing I thought about was just basic greetings and how we greet people. I really love the greeting in Korean, which probably many people have heard of, this idea, 안녕하세요. Annyeong is peace, and kind of haseo is kind of like do peace or be peace, kind of be in peace is the message when you or go in peace. And I really like that greeting, but it's not only in Asian cultures. If you think about Arabic, salam alaikum, it has basically the same meaning, be in peace. But isn't that a wonderful greeting to give to somebody?
Yes, it is indeed. And it also, once again, when we think about the history of those peoples, it makes a lot of sense that they have come up with words that actually wish peace to the person they meet.
Yeah.
It is another fascinating aspect, I believe.
Yeah. So the greeting the greeting in Japanese doesn't talk about peace.
Right.
I don't really know the connection for. Well, it's more of just morning. It is morning, or it is evening. I don't know if there are other words that should be could be attached to that. But in Japanese, I do know that. Well, Koreans will say "go in peace" or "stay in peace" to people who aren't going. In Japanese, we say "ittekimasu." So the going is going to happen right now because the person's leaving, but the kimasu is, in a sense, that word has power. In a way, it's a promise to return.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't know when we'll return, but we're saying I will return, and so I think if I will return if words have a spirit, that spirit is supporting the return and the reuniting of the person that you are parting from.
Interesting. Never thought of that. Good point.
Yes, it is indeed. And it's also, another thing which usually comes to mind when we talk about languages and how we convey different concepts is like in Japanese, you say itadakimasu when you start eating. And it is like, it is said, I hear, and I invite, everybody who is in the audience who wants to share their thoughts on this to join us. But I hear that itadakimasu is always said with gratitude in your heart for what you actually have in front of you as food. And in English and in other languages, in Bulgarian we have, it's very similar to English in this sense of the word, that it's not so much itadakimasu, it's more like you wish the person sitting with you at the table good appetite, enjoy your food.
Mm-hmm.
So the direction of these phrases is different, isn't it? Like you try to engage the person in, let's say, in many Western cultures, you try to engage the person who is sitting with you at the table in this common practice of sharing a meal. While here in Japanese, it's more like expressing gratitude for what you have in front of you.
Yeah. I love that expression as well. I remember years ago a teacher, an elementary school teacher who I knew from the neighborhood, Mr. Nita, he said to me, "Itadakimasu." We were at a local restaurant together. He said, "Itadakimasu." The meaning is, from your life into my life. Anata no inuchi kara watashi no inuchi e. So be appreciative. It shows appreciation for what you're going to eat yourself. So a difference in from Bon Appetito.
Yes, indeed. And it's
Yeah.
also, yes, the other day there was a post on LinkedIn which I saw, and it was about the passive and active voice, or the passive and active mode in different languages, and how when we use active mode, we actually are constructing the reality by using words.
Yeah.
Yes, and it made me think, about how in business communication in Japanese, we often see the passive mode used to describe what has been done.
And it's associated with politeness, right?
And it is associated, yes, with politeness. While in other, well, I can speak, for Bulgarian and English, in these two languages, well, the mode which is used for presentations is usually active mode, which is
Absolutely.
another fascinating concept, of how we behave in our communities and our own cultures. And
Yeah,
how
there's
powerful the words are when we construct that reality actually by using them.
yeah, there's in my work I often do teach the presentation skills. I'll have coaching sessions with people, and it's trying to get people who are more using a passive voice to be a more expressive voice, active voice if they're entering into that culture where that's the expected norm, because words don't have much power in cultures where they're very low context. If you're not being low context as well, one of the I think that, I don't know if I'm taking this off track, but one of the words that I remember studying about, which I really like, it's another, I wouldn't say greeting, but is the word of sumimasen. And I just came back from Canada, and so I was very kind of aware of people apologizing or thanking while I was there for a few weeks. Canadians say sorry a lot. I think almost as much as Japanese people say sumimasen. I bumped into somebody in the store, and they turned to me and said, "Oh, sorry." I bumped into you. You don't have to be sorry. But I think Canadians, we say sorry a lot. But the word sumimasen is interesting for me. So I recall 25 years ago reading this. And, I think it was in Lonely Planet. At the end of the Lonely Planet, there was a section on language. And it was saying, sumimasen comes from the word sumu,
Oh,
to be complete. And sumimasen means basically it's incomplete. So in a relationship, if I were to do something for you, for example, offer you my seat on the train, by taking that seat on the train, now our relationship is, in a sense, a little bit unbalanced. I've done something for you, you haven't done anything for me. So our relationship right now is incomplete. And so the word, from there, this word sumimasen has originated. I don't think people think that deeply about it when they say it now, but I thought that history is it's really interesting that there's a kind of in this musubi, this connectedness relationship, we haven't completed it. And it kind of lends to the idea that maybe we can complete it in the future, which is also really exciting for me.
That's really interesting. It kind of would relate to Gideon, right? The whole reciprocal obligations, and
Yes.
and that the basis of the relationship is, if somebody does something kind for you, you someday are definitely going to do something kind for them, whether it's giving a gift, reciprocating a gift, or just showing some kind of kindness. And I always thought that's the basis of a relationship. That's what connects people, that ongoing dynamic of doing things for each other.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool when I read that. I've always remembered that. I've forgotten a lot of Japanese studies, but I remember that one story. I think it's important. Mike, can we ask other people for examples? I'm
Yeah,
sure
Luke is
people.
here. Welcome, Luke.
Welcome. Really interesting discussion. Well, Graham, Maya,
Thank you.
Timothy, good morning. Yeah, I've been in Japan a while. I I work for a beverage imports company, and I come in contact with a lot of different diverse people who communicate very differently, and I just listening to about connecting to groups, and Japan, as most of us know, are very group orientated people, and I think it's a really positive thing. It obviously works well for them, and as a foreigner trying to fit into that group, I've sort of noticed that a lot of Japanese people also are trying to, how do they fit into those groups, and where do they fit in, and the power of language. Yeah, it's a really interesting, and the words, it's really interesting, and that's a um, uh, you know, one example I suppose I'd like to give is when I first came here to Japan. I had a very good friend that I'd made, and I was moving away. I was actually moving to Yamagata-ken, and he was very stressed. Actually, he said, "Look, don't learn the language in Yamagata, because when you come back to Tokyo, I'll never be able to understand you." And coming from Australia and such a young country, we don't have such sort of dialects and this kind of thing. So it didn't really click until I arrived in Yamagata and we're going for lunch. And this new friend that I just made, he just said "mamaku," and I'm like, "Sorry." And what do you mean? And he says, "Mamaku ikiba." And I'm like, "Sorry, I just don't understand it." So gohan tabe ni ikimashou. Like he just basically was inviting me to go for lunch, and in regular normal Japanese, it was like let's go and eat lunch together. Um, but for me, it was just totally different. It was just mama, which is gohan, and ku, which is to eat. So just like food, eat, let's go. Like, and
Yeah.
it just didn't. Until that moment, it was just like a penny dropped. And unless I started to learn those words or learn how to communicate in their world, in their group, which is Yamagata, um, I couldn't be part of that group. And I could really relate to when you were saying about, the power words and the way that they're used in different contexts to associate to that group. And yeah, it was really, really interesting. Thank you.
Nice, Luke. Thanks for sharing that. I would not have understood that for sure, and I think in Tokyo, a lot of people wouldn't. I agree with you. Have understood that. It reminded me of another kind of part of the greeting ritual in Korea is after saying hello to somebody, often the next thing that friends say to each other is "밥 먹었어," which is "Have you eaten?" And there's this kind of thing about, you want to make sure that your colleagues, they've eaten and that they're healthy, and if they haven't eaten, let's go eat something. So maybe connected to that idea. Thanks for sharing that. Navin, I'm not sure the pronunciation. You've joined. You please share.
The most like powerful word I've seen, but it's not very formal or like a very uh, like thank you and please and everything are obviously powerful words. I just want to say this particular word in Japanese, it's not a word, it's part of like a grammatical thing called sasuga. Sasuga desu ne, or something. So that basically means like, oh yeah, I knew you're capable of it or something. Yeah, that's awesome. But it could also mean you could also take it as a sarcastic point of view as well. But then basically, I just feel that there's a lot of power in terms of motivating people, based on how you use it. That's all I had to say.
Thanks
Thank you.
very
Sorry for
much.
bringing into politics.
No
In the beginning of the
problem.
question, like you can just ignore it. I didn't know the
No problem,
nomenclature
Navin. No
of the group.
problem.
Thank you.
But Sasuga, you adjusted very quickly, very smoothly, like a flowing rock. So the kanji.
Thank you.
I've
Awesome.
never understood the kanji, but it's always interesting. It's like flowing and rock. Nagariru ishi for that word. So there must be some power of that word. I don't know, but Heidi,
It
you've
has a lot
joined
of
as
power,
well.
man. Yeah, I just feel, I don't know if it's because I am, Gaigokujin, so because it could be like something naturally among the usage in Japanese, but then I just felt that something really powerful. It's like someone does something,
Sasuga.
you get a choice whether to be like, serious, genuine about it, or sarcastic about it as well. It has that
Yeah.
nuance to it. But then I guess people who are like, just want to have the positive attitude towards it would be like, use it for like just saying, wow, that's awesome, man. Like, I knew you
Yeah.
could pull it off or something
Yeah.
like that.
It has some. I like the word. I like it. I like that. Maybe someone else can comment on it.
Actually, I think that's a really great point, though, associated to the kanji. I think that's where, well, like certainly in English, it doesn't work when you say sasuga. Graham's called up the image of the kanji, and that brings meaning to the word as well. Whereas in English, that doesn't happen. Like if you say whatever word in English, it doesn't recall the spelling of that word to give it meaning, which adds another element to what we're talking about, but it also adds power as well, I think.
Yeah, exactly, Luke. So you have, I think, people who have children, when they name their children, they're thinking, I want to have an honest boy. So Shoji Kinako, I name him Makoto. I want my daughter to have a happy life. Shiawase ni naru, we call her Sachiko. And we include characters into the names that display that meaning, connecting it to the person's name. I think that's pretty powerful as well.
Yes, it is. I remember when you just because you mentioned it, I remember when my daughter was born. So my husband actually spent more than a week thinking about the kanji characters for her name. Because and searching for them, and because he knew what he wanted her to be or her character to be and what he wished for, but it was really difficult to find the kanji characters that match the sound of the name and also express the meaning of that. Yes, it's another fascinating aspect of the Japanese culture. Thank you.
Yeah,
for
I
sharing
named
that.
my son Rai-kun, and
Yeah.
we were going to call him do Kaminari, but we decided with Shindai no Rai, and we actually went with an out-of-date kanji which has katana at the top. So just like you, my grandparents spent a lot of time with my wife deciding on that kanji.
Yeah, indeed. And Yuka, hello. Thank you for coming up.
Wait a minute,
I
Heidi.
think
I thought
Heidi is actually, Heidi is ahead of me.
Yeah,
So.
Heidi was here first. Heidi, go ahead.
Okay, Heidi, good morning. Sorry for
Good morning.
cutting.
Yes.
What's that? The queue?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Yep.
coming. So
Thank you for inviting me up onto the stage. This is my first time in the room, and I just wanted to say firstly, it's a very fascinating topic and a very interesting discussion. I'm a translator, and it's the first time for me to hear this term, Kotodama. I wasn't familiar with it before, but the longer I translate, the more aware I am of the power, the spiritual kind of nuance attached to the word. So, for example, a word like kokoro, which you would translate as heart, right? If you looked into a dictionary, the longer I'm in Japan, the more aware I am that heart is not a good translation for kokoro, and mind doesn't work either, and spirit or soul, none of these words really fit. And that kind of deeper feeling about a word, I think, is something which this phrase Kotodama kind of covers. So it's a very difficult kind of feeling to pin down. And the second thing I wanted to say was, Graham, you mentioned about planting, how words are kind of seeds, and from the seeds this power, this spirit grows. And actually, this isn't a plug, by the way, but when I was thinking of a name for my company, I was looking at what the kanji meant and what the words meant. And eventually I went for Kotonaha bloom. So Kotonaha is a more poetic way of saying kotoba, right?
Really?
And you have the leaf there, and then you have the words there, and then it's blooming. So the words that I plant are seeds that bloom, and that helps your business grow, blah, blah, blah. But I thought what you said about the seeds, it really resonated with me. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that. I had forgotten about Kotonoha, so that's good as well. Thank you.
If I weren't very well versed in, I'm not actually well versed in kanji, sorry, but then I would probably misconstrue it to being like, word balls or something like that.
Okay. Can you expand on that a touch? Okay.
Tama also can be a ball, and balls are words. They keep rotating and revolving and bring up new meanings and sentences and everything. In that concept, sorry. I'll just mute myself. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, but I like that idea of how we can kind of connect words to, especially kanji with the jukugo. You can make new words with just reordering kanji, and I think that's kind of maybe connected to the comment. Yuka, would you like to join?
I can't wait to hear what Yuka has to say. Welcome, Yuka-san.
Hi. Finally, I'm able to join this club again. The holidays are great, but it's great to be back at regular routine, right? Anyway, so before I share my newly gained knowledge about Japanese word or language, let me just say my New Year resolution, so that I am going to be, I try to keep my New Year resolution, which is actually has been the same for the last 10 years. So I haven't been successful. But anyway, I am going to speak slowly in English or Japanese. Okay, so if I start talking fast, just remind me of my New Year resolution. So thank you. Anyway, so the word. This is actually I just learned this. That when you greet, your friend or whomever, you just say konnichiwa, and konnichiwa is actually can be written. The kyo meaning like, hey, how are you today? That's why I thought that that's a short form of how are you today. But actually, I was corrected recently. The Japan is pretty much only one nation which worship the sun. That's why a lot of Japanese people, they wake up early to see the first sunrise of a new year, which I didn't do today this year. The Hatsuhino Day. So I thought, that's why. And then also the sun also mean konnichi-sama. So whenever you use konnichiwa, you're almost like showing the repeated respect for the sun. I'm sure I just botched my explanation, but have you heard of this, or somebody was giving me a hard time?
No, this is the first time to hear of that actually, but it's interesting and it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It's a beautiful greeting too, and well, it's amazing. Just thank you very much for giving us that. I don't know, maybe somebody else. Graham, have you heard that before?
Yeah.
First time for me to hear that. But yeah, I mean, it's looking at the characters, it's pretty plausible.
Right. And actually, there's a follow-up to this. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, but just briefly. And then when you say goodbye, you say sayonara, right?
Yes.
Sayonara and sayo actually mean if that's the case. So when you say the konnichiwa, and then you tend to say, yeah, I'm good today, and then, if that's the case, and you keep going, having a good day. Sayonara, dewa, see you later. So I said, it's kind of interesting. But anyway, I'm seriously hoping I'm right on this. Thanks.
Well, we hope so too. I believe you are, but if somebody in the audience is, of a different opinion, come up and let us know. Right.
I don't have
enlighten me.
Oh, sorry, Yuka-san, go ahead.
I'm done. Go ahead.
No, all I just want to say is when you guys are done with the speakers, I just have an exercise for to bring about positivity. Probably later on, after you guys heard all the speakers, if you could give me permission to let you all participate in this exercise, I think it would be really great. But then it's all of you guys, the moderators. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's see. We've got also Anton. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
From London. I think this is an interesting subject. I mean, I lived in Japan for a while, and I've worked as a translator, and I've spent a lot of time, studying the characters, reading the language, and over the years living in Japan, there are some certain words, well, me personally, that I began to really dislike, and certain words that I began to like more. Like certain words I felt had a very negative connotation, and certain words have more of a positive feeling to it. So, for example, the word, ganbarimasu, has a very negative feeling. Eventually, after several years in Japan, I had a very negative feeling towards that word, and I prefer to use the word, doryokushimasu, which uses the kanji chikara. I don't know how other people feel about it, but this word, every time I hear ganbarimasu or ganbaru, it's extremely painful. It's almost like it's a stressful word. It's about enduring pain, whereas doryoku is more like strength, because it contains the chikara, or anything that contains chikara, ryoku. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share that and see what everyone else thinks.
Well, to me that makes a lot of sense, because when you think about gaman and somehow it relates to gambaru. Personally, for me, and I may be mistaken, but like you, it's much more sensible to use the word doryokushimasu. And still, I believe that for the local people here, it doesn't make that much sense, but still. And of course, it also, gaman and gambaru, probably they relate to the stoicism, which is so very common here. People are really stoic, and that gaman the gaman culture is very strong still. But at the same time, we have seen a lot of it, even well in times of crisis. And yeah, I know personally for me it's something which is really demanding, but at the same time, this is something which obviously has kept the communities here coherent, and they have been kept together. Let's say. So I don't know. I believe at the end of the day, it's where we come from and what our perceptions of the world are that eventually, what's that? Determine how we feel about certain concepts. Even new concepts for us. But probably other people, Tim and Navin, yes, you.
Yeah, no, just as an aside, yesterday I posted an old blog post on LinkedIn, and it's related to the word "gambatte kudasai," right? So
Yes.
Robert Whiting wrote about this in his great book, You Gotta Have Wa.
Oh, yeah.
And this is back when the Yokohama, they were called the Taiyo Whales, now they're the Bay Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have a kickoff party at the beginning of the baseball season. And the interpreters, they would go around, and the executives of the then Taiyo Whales would tell the American players, "Gambatte kudasai," and the interpreter would say, "Do your best." And the American baseball players would say, instead of saying thank you, they'd say, "What do you mean? Of course I'm going to do my best. I'm a professional." They wouldn't respond the way the Japanese wanted them to. So they got wise to it, and instead of saying "do your best," they started saying "good luck," which obviously isn't a direct translation, but it got the desired response. And that's Edward T. Hall's thing. Intercultural communication is not necessarily about sending the right message. It's about getting a desired response. And so I thought that was a brilliant workaround, even though the actual meaning is different.
Can I jump in here? Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
Please.
Yeah, I actually saw Timothy's post yesterday, and when Anton was talking about Gambaru, I was thinking about how it reflects back on this whole discussion. If not, as people who are learning the language, we somehow see a little more depth or add a little bit of our own interpretation onto the words than perhaps a native speaker or someone native to the culture would. So, for example, I also feel similar connotations to Anton regarding the word gambaru, and I prefer not to use it. But after I was thinking back to Timothy's post about how gambaru is equivalent to good luck, and when we say good luck, we don't necessarily really think about it. We're not praying that somebody is going to have good fortune. It's just a word that we throw out there. And I think similarly, gambaru is often a word that Japanese people throw out. I mean, not necessarily. Sometimes Japanese people also feel it has a negative connotation and would perhaps use a different word. But I do wonder if we bring our own culture, I think we bring our own culture, our own interpretations to the Japanese language when we're learning it. And therefore, we might be a little bit more sensitive to negative connotations, which are not necessarily there within the Japanese, because for them, it's just a word. It's just a word that they use every day, and they don't necessarily think deeply about this gambaru is connected to like gaman until questioned about it. What do you think?
I completely agree with you, Heidi.
Can I add on to something which Heidi-san just said?
Yes.
Okay, and also based on what Anton said. So basically, I believe that doryoku shimasu. I think that it relies on something really specific. Okay. And it could also have something negative in the sense that the person who wants something to do this particular thing better, and I didn't really expect that from you. Like, maybe you should work on that. Like, hi, wakarimashita, dorekushimasu. Okay, but then, okay, hey, dude, I'm giving this opportunity. You need to go and make the sale for us. Like, and I really wish you the best for this. Like, hi, wakarimashita, ganbarimasu. You can see the difference in that, right? So I think dorekushimasu is kind of lends itself to be more negative, but if I'm wrong, you can correct me. But I just felt that nuance is very delicate between those things. So gambarimasu is always like overall positive, I guess. So gambate kudasai thing.
Yes,
but if I tell someone like dorikshite kudasai or something like that, then nuance matters. That's my opinion anyway. In this case.
I would love to hear June. Hello, June. Thank you for coming up. So,
hello, everybody.
I can see you're based in Cairns.
Yeah, I'm actually living in Australia totally 26 years. Okay. Then I live in Cairns about 7 years now. Then I since I live in Australia a long time, and starting to look at my Japanese background, and this topic's really appealing because maybe about 2 or 3 years I pay attention for the Kotodama. What is Kotodama? Because I believe the Kotodama, it's more like I'm looking to the kind of technique to give me a certain special sort of power, actually. Famous Japanese scientists actually check with water affected by words. So nice words on the, on the water. It's a water. It's a really beautiful shape.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think, because our body, most of water, right? So that's why my voice is most affected to my blood. So that's why if I choose good words, scientifically affected my body. That's why Kotodama quite appealing to it. Then I starting to firstly chanting. It's called Heart Sutra, which is one of the Buddhism chanting, which is 1300 years Japanese people chanting for it. Then I starting to chanting the Heart Sutra, and also I kind of studying or what is a good Kotodama through the book, and I found the one is arigato. As far as know, that was the best words, good vibration. Because arigato, literally meaning hard to happen. So this thinking, it's more like a leading to appreciation. For example, if I wake up, arigato for today because wake up, which is leading to appreciation. So words is good, and also by saying that arigato, I realized that how wonderful or how grateful I'm living today. So both way, anyway, it's kind of feel like powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And another example, I joined the workshop for the Kotodama, and she used to working for shrine. Like shrine people very careful about choosing good words because they believe the bad words hurting good God. Then she said, it's still remembering. I just try not to say suimasen, because if you be in Japan, maybe you heard suimasen, right? Everywhere, suimasen, suimasen, suimasen. But she said, suimasen actually means sumanai. Sumu means clear.
Yes.
So, which means if I say suimasen, you said, I'm not clear, which I'm not honest, right?
That's
So that's why
interesting.
so in that case, but you don't realize that, but your body understanding, or maybe God or as a spiritual whatever, realizing you said, I am honest. I'm not honest. So that's why instead of suimasen, you should say gomen nasai. Then you realize that most people don't say gomen nasai because gomen nasai quite strong. So most of cases, for example, like suimasen, ちょっと言っていいですか means you don't have to say sorry. That case is you don't have to say sorry. That's why people say すいません. You understand? So that's why sometimes by careful using the words, your way of thinking also changed it. So that's why quite a Kotodama, it's a lot of, leading to like a realization thing.
Nice. Thanks very much, Jun. Couldn't agree more. I think in the world we're in a period where it's really easy to focus on a lot of negative stuff around us. In my 2-week trip back to Vancouver visiting family, my wife and I were not thinking about Kotodama, but we were always thinking about, we only have 2 weeks with family, so let's just always try and choose a positive conversation. So we constantly were supporting each other to just guide conversations in a more positive direction. I think use of words is definitely connected to that. We all know there are some people, we've met people in our lives who are just, that person is just so positive, and we kind of feel inspired to being around that person. And that's the kind of person connected to my idea of Kenko for this year. Not only physical health, but kind of mental and spiritual health. I want to focus on using more positive words and be more aware of my words and invite positiveness into my life by kind of using positive energy myself. So I think I really appreciate your comments. Jun, thank you.
Can I ask Jun-san a quick question, if I may?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. So, in relation to what Anton has shared with us about the negative connotation of gambarimasu, right? Me as a Japanese native speaker with my friends, like we throw gambaru all the time. Like, my friend was going to get PCR test, and I said, okay, well, ganbatte ne. And then PCR test has, doesn't require any of, your efforts, right? So I'm actually was surprised to hear, some of those words are sending sort of bad vibe. So is Junsan like a feeling like we throw out ganbaru a lot, or what is your take on that?
It's actually I'm listening to the Anton's talking about the Gambarimasu, but I think the point of the Kotodama to me is slightly different. So me, Kotodama is literally the words, but Gambarimasu to me is more like how do I think? I think because Gambaru, a couple people saying that if I use the Gambarimasu on good meanings, it's like really caring for the person, and then some people say gambatte. So that case is, I believe, good Kotodama, but other different meanings. Gambaru means, sometimes people say gambaru means kind of like a stress, or sometimes like a didn't care about. Actually, sometimes gambatte is like what can I do with it? You know what I mean? So really depending on situation, maybe some words changing the Kotodama effect. But I personally, I don't try use the gambaru because very easy to misleading.
If I can,
Okay, then yeah, I think I'm gonna control. Yeah, okay, all right.
sorry, just something very quick on the Gumbaru subject. I took my daughter to a climbing gym. After the Olympics, she's all inspired, and there's a local climbing gym that opened up, and we're there, and she's trying, and the instructor and the other people are Gumba, Gumba. I'm like, Gumba? What's Gumba? And she's really trying hard. She's halfway up this wall, and she was struggling to even get up, let alone down. Like, Gumba, Hikacha Gumba.
Right.
I'm like, what's Gumba? And then it's like Gumbaru. And they were saying it, I think, as what was just being said by Ken. It's the feeling behind it, rather than that's more important than No, I totally agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it goes to what Tim, usually says when he talks about cross-cultural communication, that all things are situational. And look, to what you say, and also June, to what you just mentioned, it's probably at the end of the day, it's all up to us to decide the vibes, whether we have those positive vibes or the negative ones. So yes, I think that definitely words have a lot of power, and they can definitely, let's say, shape a situation. But this is us, people, humans, who use the words. And so it is up to us to decide how we use them. And then in conclusion, I would just say, be careful how you use them. So yes, and when you're with family and friends, or even people you don't know, it's always better to use the words for a positive impact and not to create, negative feelings.
Well said, Maya. Well said.
Thank you for
That was kind of my my conclusion comment that I had thought about earlier, is that you can, my mother always would tell me, Graham, you can pretty much say anything, but it depends on how you say it. So choose your words carefully. That was her advice to me.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much, Graham.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.